Hello, everyone. It's Alan here again with another episode of Empowered Money. And it is March, baby, and it is pure and utter madness right now. March Madness, typically talking about a basketball tournament, but right now we're talking about tariffs and taxes and everything else that's going on in this world and wars. And oh my goodness. Tell you what, if I was a chiropractor right now, I think that my business would be booming because I'm getting whiplash just keeping up with all the news that's going on right now. But today we are actually going to be talking about March Madness and the beautiful tournament, maybe one of the best tournaments in the world coming up here. And what we're really going to be talking about today is gambling, right? And gambling and how it is affecting the overall economy, how it's affecting the sports, and how it's affecting individuals' wallets here, right? So we are going to be talking about, in general, sports betting here, and we are going to pull that back to how that reflects, how that affects companies, how that affects individuals, and then also draw in how it can be an analogy for long-term investing as well here. All right, so let's hop right on in here. Let's talk first and foremost about employers, right? And the cost to the workplace productivity that this tournament has, right? Now, they do these studies. I have zero clue how they do these studies, and I don't know if I even believe them, but studies are estimating that there's about $16 billion of productivity lost in the month of March because of March Madness distractions here, right? So that's people live streaming games at work, that's checking scores at work, that's discussing the upsets at the water cooler, right? Taking extended lunch breaks. And so, yeah, there's a lot of time lost, particularly when that good upset's about to happen here. Now, I'll be honest with you. I lean into that. We're actually taking Thursday afternoon off as a team. We're going to go to the Battery Live Atlanta here at the Atlanta Braves Stadium, and we're going to be watching basketball games all afternoon. Because here's the deal: we could either secretly watch basketball games on our iPhone or tablet separately and try to hide it from one another, or we can create a team event out of this and just lean into this thing, right? So we're going to go get some good food. We're going to go get some cold drinks, and we're going to enjoy some basketball here this up couple Thursdays from now here. So yes, there's a lot lost, but I think a lot of companies have looked at this as a sunk cost here and are actually leaning into it and say, hey, how can we actually use this as a client event, which is what we're going to do, or a team building event right here, right? And so, yes, there's $16 billion in productivity lost. That being said, a whole afternoon of fun game. Now, the problem isn't just on Thursday. The tournament extends to Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and then the next week, and then the next week, right? So we're looking at a month-long tournament here. So I'm going to lean into it for that first day here, and then I'm going to hope there's not too much productivity loss because there is a lot less games during the day going forward, right? So if you're a team lead, if you are own your own business, just lean into it. Take it as a sunk cost. Go out, have some fun, use it as a way to bond with your team and your coworkers there, and yeah, have a blast doing it. All right, now that's on the corporate level, $16 billion lost. Let's talk about on the personal level. All right, so here is where gambling is really good. Number one, it's really good for the economy. It's a big business. It's $100 billion a year industry right now. Okay. 15 billion of that is actually during March Madness, right? But $100 billion a year industry. And guess what we have to do when we win? We have to pay taxes. Guess what we don't get when we lose? We don't get to offset the gains with our losses, right? So from Uncle Sam's standpoint, this is gorgeous. This is beautiful. Bring in the tax money. Hey, people were going to bet anyways. Let's legalize it. Let's try to regulate it. Let's tax the heck out of it, right? So from a government perspective, huge winners on the gambling side. Matter of fact, we've been doing gambling for a long time here. For the Hope Scholarship here in Georgia, that's funded by gambling. So long story short, governments, whether they're state or federal, big fans of gambling, huge driver of tax revenue. All right. Guess who else is a big winner? Yeah, big winner is also the sports themselves, right? So I've never cared about a parlay where some team in Seattle is playing this other team and this running back has to get yards. And I'm probably butchering this. You might imagine I'm actually a big gambler here, but what what gambling does is it drives participation and engagement. And now all of a sudden, you might kind of like fantasy football. You might watch that Sunday night 8 o'clock game until the finish because you want to see if your quarterback gets those extra points that's going to put you over the top, right? You might watch Monday Night Football if your running back is the difference whether or not you win or lose that week, right? So fantasy football is not necessarily gambling, even though a lot of gambling goes along with that, right? But that level of engagement is also the same level of engagement that we have when we put money on the line for whether or not Butler's going to beat Drexel, right? And now all of a sudden we are thinking about a game that we otherwise would never have thought and watching it rather intensely there. Okay, so two huge winners: government with tax revenue, the sports with more engagement there, right? And you can see they are promoting this a lot during the games, right? So it's kind of funny. Gambling on the game of baseball is illegal. They actually outlawed Pete Rose from the Hall of Fame and from baseball and banned him from baseball for gambling on it. But then you turn around and they're having advertisements all the time from gambling websites. Why? Because they want you to gamble on the games because it's going to get you more engaged. And overall, they think it drives fan experience, right? All right, so there's two winners: the government and the sport. What about third winner? Yes, you can win at this. Not likely, but you can win. And every now and then somebody is a big winner here. But let's talk about the losers, because the truth is, as good as this is for the government and the tax credits, tax revenue, as good as it is for the sports, the truth is, and as much fun as it can add to the consumer, the truth is it can ruin lives. Gambling ruins lives. Okay. And if you listen to any gambling advertisement, part of that advertisement is going to be promoting helplines to people who are addicted to gambling, right? As a matter of fact, whenever gambling is being legalized, which in Georgia it's not right now, but whenever it's going through a state to be legalized in that state, a portion of the earnings have to be set aside for rehabilitation here, right? So it's great for the government, great for the sport, great for a very, very few amount of winners, and great for people who have more fun because they got some money on the line here. But on the other hand, it can ruin people's lives, ruin people's families, ruin people's futures, and we got to be aware of that, right? So let's dive in to who is betting the most here. All right, so when I grew up, sports betting actually right now still isn't legal in the state of Georgia, but it wasn't even really available anywhere. And now all of a sudden, it's very available on your phone, on your tablets here, on your computer. It's very easy to place those bets if you're in a state that allows it, right? So put in a couple bucks here and a couple bucks there, a couple bucks there. Next thing you know, you've got a three-leg parlay. Who knows, right? And now you're wondering if Shohei Ohtani is going to go 3 for 4 or who's going to be the upset in March Madness, right? So I didn't grow up with that. I still really don't have access to that. So I don't do that. And a lot of my friends don't. But what we're seeing is that the younger generation, we're gonna include the Z's and millennials in the same thing there, even though they couldn't be more different, right? Because just because that's the stat that I've got, right? So in this stat, 60% of millennials and Gen Z play sports bets, while only 50% have a retirement account. And that right there is startling. Okay. And what this stat doesn't say is, okay, well, how much are they actually betting? They're just betting a couple bucks here versus how much are they putting towards their retirement here. But I have seen other studies say that actually people are betting more money than they are saving on their retirements, right? Now, who say, well, okay, well, yeah, but what are they making on that gambling bet? Well, the truth is about 75% of bets lose money, right? And as long as you give the market 10 years, it's going to go up about 80% of the time on a rolling 10-year basis, right? So we're talking about odds of wealth growing here, much better in the market than they are going to be on gambling here. But we have I'm not going to say a gambling problem, but we need to be aware of what's going on, particularly with the younger generation, oftentimes with younger males. They are betting money on these sports games, and that is taking up time, it's taking up some money here. Overall, I'm not certain that it's a healthy thing here, and we need to at least be cognizant of this here. Now, let's talk about this. How does gambling on sports differ from investing in the market, because when I was growing up, my dad told me that investing in the market was gambling, right? Buying individual stocks was gambling. And I do want to be clear, there are ways to invest money that sure as heck seem like legalized gambling. Maybe we're putting all of our chips on um, one stock or a couple of stocks here. Maybe we're trading on margin here and we're getting super risky. And there are some things there that sure as heck seem like gambling. And therefore, I think day traders and people who gamble on sports are probably pretty, if there's a Venn diagram, they're kind of in the middle right there with that, right? But let's talk a little bit about how investing in the market differs from gambling on sports events, right? So let's talk about odds versus ownership. So when you bet on a sport, on a player, on a parlay, you're hoping for luck here, right? There's really not much skill in there. I realize maybe playing like poker could be a skill a little bit, right? And that's a form of gambling, but we're talking about sports betting here, right? So we're hoping for luck, and just hope is not a really good strategy long term. It might win short term, it might win a few times, but long term, it's not a great strategy. But when you invest, you're actually owning part of the company here. And that company is going to hire smart people who work really hard to build the value of that company over time. As that company grows, so does your portfolio. Now, the truth is, not all companies hire smart people. Not all smart people work hard. And even smart people who work hard over time might be hit with a tariff that throws their business out of whack. There might be a war that throws off their supply chain, right? There might be a hurricane that comes through, a wildfire that comes through. There's a lot of things that could affect a company, right? So what we're able to do in the market, though, is we're able to go and invest in a ton of companies here, to hundreds, if not thousands, of different companies, all in different industries in different countries with different leaderships there. So we're really able to diversify away and mitigate a lot of risks. Now, when it comes to risk in the market, there is one risk that's really hard to mitigate from. That's what we call systemic risk. When everything's down, everything goes down. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes the tide goes out. And as long as we know that the tide will come back in, or at least historically has always come back in, and we don't freak out, we're going to be A-OK, right? But sometimes we get stuck in the sand on our boat because the tide's out. We wonder if that water is ever going to come back in. Sometimes we jump ship and say, you know what, I've had enough. And that can be problematic there. If we just wait till the tide comes back in, we will be fine. Well, unfortunately, when we're gambling, that's not exactly how it always works, right? You can go on a cold streak, and there's really no guarantee that you're going to get back on a hot streak here, right? So, and when you lose in gambling, you realize those losses immediately. When you lose in the stock market, you only really realize those losses if you freak out, sell, and don't reinvest, right? So, odds versus ownership, hope and luck versus long-term investing, right? Now, let's also talk about the house edge versus market growth, right? So when we're talking about gambling, I just want to be clear that the casino is going to win in the long. The house is always going to win in the long term, right? So the casino is really designed there to take your money, where the stock market is designed for a long-term historical growth that rewards patient investors here, right? So we've got one institution there that is designed to take your money in the house and the casino, and you got the stock market that historically has had really good returns here. Right. Now, last but not least, and this is really what it comes down to, is that gambling has become a form of entertainment, right? It's not really, maybe it is replacing investing for some individuals, and that's really sad there. But realistically, I think people are betting very small amounts, and they're getting a lot of gratification, instant gratification from that. Once again, they're more engaged in the Butler basketball game because they've got a line on how many points are going to be scored in the first half or something stupid like that, right? So, instant gratification versus long-term strategy. So betting is about quick wins, right? And losses in the entertainment that you're getting. And there is value in there. I don't want to downplay that value. It does probably make it more fun to watch a game when you have some skin in the game, right? Investing is all about long-term wealth. And not just one game, right? So think about, long-term investing being a full season or being franchise mode, where we're thinking multiple seasons out here and how to build a team and structure a team. Whereas gambling is just really thinking about that one game, or shoot, maybe even that one quarter or that one. Right. But in the end, I think I mentioned this earlier, about 75% of bettors lose money in the long run, while stock market historically has returned roughly about 10% on average, right? So I don't know about you. I'd rather take the long-term odds on there, right? And I'd rather, let's say if we're going to game on anything, let's game on your future being bright here and that the stock market going up, right? Because that's what historically has proven. Okay. So what can March Madness? What are the parallels? We mentioned a Venn diagram earlier. Where does March Madness and where does stock investing actually correlate here? Where are some analogies, metaphors that we could take? Right. Number one is that in the stock market, it's very easy to diversify your picks. Right. So imagine. The S&P 500 index is you owning all 500 stocks and weighted towards how much they weight and on the S&P 500. So imagine that you were to go invest on every single basketball team in the 64-team March Madness bracket, but you're putting more money on number one seeds and less money on, 16 seeds, things of that nature, right? Well, now all of a sudden you're really de-risking right there. You're really diversifying your odds. And I actually don't know if you would win money if you did that. That'd be a really interesting study right there, right? I wonder how much more you'd have to put on the one seeds and the 16 seeds, but basically we don't know who is going to win at the end of the day. That's what's so great about this tournament. And that's also the stock market. We really don't know who's going to win over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Shoot, I don't think many people even knew about NVIDIA 5 years ago. And here they are, right, leading the way for a lot of things. So diversifying your picks rather than just putting everything on one number one seed just because that was your alma mater. We're gonna put money on multiple teams here. That's exactly what we want to do with investing. Rather than putting all of our money into one stock, we want to diversify it to the tilt on there. Right now, I do want to be clear about diversification. All right, the easiest way to make a lot of money is what we call concentration of assets. It's also the easiest way to lose a lot of money, right? So if you had a really good feeling about this one team and you put all, let's say you had $1,000 to bet, you put all $1,000 on that one team. Well, that is going to be the easiest way to make a lot of money, right? Because when you diversify, you are going to limit some of the upside, but it's also the quickest way to lose that $1,000, right? Because the chances of you being right are very slim. Right. So same exact thing in the stock market. The quickest way to make a lot of money is choose one stock and hope for the best. But like we said, hope's not a great strategy long term, right? So if we diversify, we're going to increase the odds of us earning money and making money over time. But we're also probably going to limit a little bit of our downside or upside right there. Definitely lowering the downside and are increasing our floor, but also lowering our ceiling through diversification. I think there's a famous quote by Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner, that basically says that diversification is for people who don't know what they're doing, which is really ironic because they are very well diversified in their portfolios, right? So it's kind of like, hey, sure, you can say this catchy little phrase right here, but at the end of the day, when you look at what you did, you were really well diversified, right? Now, and the truth is, for people who don't know what they're doing, man, the problem is even if you're the smartest person in the world and you study all this time on which stocks to pick, at the end of the day, you are going to be looking at financial statements that the company has produced that have so much wallpaper and window dressings on them, and frankly you don't know what to believe out of it, right? So even if you had access to all this research and information, I still don't think that you would be able to make the right picks over the long haul, right? March Madness, you can dive into all the analytics and the stats and do your best to pick the team that's going to win. At the end of the day, you're probably going to be wrong, right? So that's where diversification comes in. So diversifying your picks in March Madness, diversifying your stocks here in the stock market. All right. Next thing, ignore the hype, right? Every year there's a Cinderella team that's really going to get overhyped here. Maybe a number one seed that's really hyped and then loses in the first round to a Cinderella, right? Hey, this happens. This happens with basketball teams. This happens with trendy stocks as well. So we do want to stick to solid fundamentals. Once again, diversify from that risk. And then obviously we do want to think long term here, right? So just like in the tournament, okay, we know who's going to win the first couple of rounds here, but how are they going to match up later on against this basketball team's defense? We got to think about that because there are multiple rounds of this tournament. And when we're thinking about investing, there's multiple rounds of investing in your life. We call these business cycles. Economy grows, gets a little fat, it sheds the excess, it recesses, it hits a trough, and then it goes back into growth mode. And it's like a constant wave coming in and out and in and out, right? And we forget about this because, frankly, since 2008, the economy really has not acted in business cycles so much. It's been one really long growth cycle here. So we're a little bit out of ordinary here, but in general, what we are going to find is that the economy grows and expands. It hits its peak. It starts recessing here, what I would call trimming the fat. It hits a trough, and then it goes right back into growth mode there, right? So when we're thinking long term here about March Madness and the tournament, but also about our investing, just know that, hey, we have these business cycles. The tide's going to come in, the tide's going to come out. We just got to be patient. Right. So, hey, enjoy the madness of March because my gosh, basketball tournament's 3 weeks away when I'm filming this. And my gosh, it's already madness out there in the markets and the economy. Right. So enjoy the madness, have fun, be smart with your money. Right. If you want to throw a couple bucks on a team, sure, go ahead. It's not going to delay your retirement, but do consider how much money you're spending on a monthly basis and how much, let's say $1,000, how much that would mean in your retirement if you were to invest that long term over there. So, hey, thanks so much for listening to Empowered Money here. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe and do all that cool stuff. Leave a review. Let me know, good, bad, leave a review. Share with a friend, right? Let me know how I can get better. But until next time, hey, make smart bets, but be even smarter about your investments.